Hello, everyone. Oops, I didn't do the countdown. I'm gonna do it now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Science. You know, sometimes things go how we want them to, and sometimes they just don't. And tonight is one of those nights, so here I am. We are going to have just a kind of abbreviated, simple show tonight. I'm going to run through the stories I prepped. And then we're going to call it a night. Everyone can go pop some popcorn, watch a little TV, maybe snuggle into bed early. If you're on the other side of the planet, start your day with just an extra little walk outside. I don't know. But we're going to go through a little bit of science and then we're going to get started. This is the live podcast broadcast on YouTube. Yes, I am alone tonight. Kiki is at her son's graduation tonight. Pretty important. Very proud of everything going on over there. And Justin, unfortunately, the internet would not allow him to join us tonight. So, you know, you do what you can. Who knows, maybe he'll pop in halfway through. We'll see what happens. But we're going to get started. Again, this is the live podcast broadcast, so this is the raw bits here. We are going to start the official kind of audio broadcast in a moment. That'll get edited if needed, probably, because it's just me talking the whole night. So I'm going to make mistakes. And that'll show up on your various podcatcher things. So we are going to get started. Is everyone in the chat room ready? Y'all need to really lift me up tonight. You gotta like be active in the chat room, ask me questions so I'm not just talking into the ether. I know you're there. You really gotta interact with me tonight so I know I'm not alone. Hello, 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 hello. Also, hopefully, I won't get pulled away by a child. Let me just check and see what's happening over there. All right, looking pretty good. All right, are we all ready? I didn't remember to do any of it. What's the date? Oh, right, got it. Okay. How do we start again? I gotta find my audio. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode 1018, and I'm going to start over already. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 1018, recorded on Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Panel, more like SHAMEL. Hi, everybody. I'm Blair Bazdarich, and today we will fill your head with bees, chimps, and sea cucumbers. But first, disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Sometimes the show goes off without a hitch. Sometimes all your friends are there. Sometimes there's endless science to discuss. But not tonight. Tonight it's just me, Blair, with a few simple stories and all of you listening. So please join us for another night of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries.
Good science to you, chat room. And welcome to This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being my co-hosts in the chat room and in your ears and on your various devices. I have a great show ahead. It's going to be a little abbreviated, but we have so much to get to. On this week's show, I have some science news. I have a little bit about a vaccine panel you may have heard about. I also have yawning chimps, bees on brakes, and bats and cucumbers without cancer. As we jump into the show, I want to remind you that subscribing to the TWIS podcast on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube or Facebook, brings you TWIS every time a new episode is published, even one like tonight. Just search for This Week in Science where podcasts are found. Or you can always go to twis.org and click on any of the buttons that you find there. But now it's time for science. Now, first, I'm going to get into the unpleasantness related to the United States government and its current stance on science, particularly medical science. Just a quick bit of it is science news here, that RFK Jr. has, he's our health secretary, and he has removed all 17 sitting members of the CDC Vaccine Advisory Panel. So that is the Center for Disease Control Advisory Panel for vaccines. And so they make recommendations to the CDC about who gets vaccines, who gets preferential access to vaccines, the childhood vaccinations that they receive at various appointments, the schedule that it comes out on. When they decided you needed a COVID vaccine every so often, that came from them. So they are experts in their field. They are up to date on vaccine science and all of the kind of tests going on. They're following trends. They're looking at how quickly illnesses are spreading. And that is, they'll kind of use all of that information to come together and make recommendations to the CDC. So a couple days ago, he removed all 17 sitting members. And now, as of today, he's placed 8 people. That's not enough for a quorum. So they can't actually make any recommendations yet. So they need 17 to 19 to be able to be a full complement on the panel. But they need at least, it looks like 10 to be able to make a quorum and to be able to make recommendations. So he has to still make a couple appointments. In the meantime, we're kind of just sitting around waiting. Unfortunately, a lot of these individuals, as we might have guessed, are not particularly pro-vaccine. A lot of them have posted things to social media or released papers that were later debunked that kind of shined, or I guess cast a shadow over vaccines, their effectiveness, the need for them, all these sorts of things. The former deputy assistant to the Department of Health and Human Services in the first Trump administration wrote in a post on Twitter today, this is a huge win for the medical freedom movement. And the problem with this, of course, is that aside from just people are going to get sick and die because they won't be getting the vaccines that they need, it's really not just a personal choice, the vaccinations, which is why they need to be these intense recommendations that are pushed, and there's strong faith in the science and the expertise behind it, because the vaccines that you and I get keep other people healthy. This was very clear when I had an infant that was too young to get his vaccines, or he'd only gotten 1 or 2 rounds of vaccine and there was more to come. I counted on everyone around me having vaccinated themselves so that he did not get sick. Similarly, if you're immunocompromised, if you're elderly, if you are allergic to certain medications or vaccines, all of those things depend on herd immunity, and you only get to herd immunity with high vaccination rates. And I know you all know that already, but it's just important to know what's going on so we can all kind of be alert. We can ask our doctors for recommendations on whether we should be getting vaccinations or not. And just, I guess, you have to take anything that comes out of his office with a grain of salt at this point, because just everybody on this new panel, they have all sorts of things in their background that prove that they do not have high support in vaccination in general. We have a measles outbreak happening. It's just, it's very tough. So I bring that up just so everyone's aware of what's going on, and so hopefully we can make it clear that this is something that we care about to our elected officials. So that's kind of the glimmer of hope I'll give you all, is that this is another reminder to let your elected officials know what matters to you. And health and human services matter to a lot of us. Go figure, huh? So I really hope that our vaccines are still available to us, and there will still be ways to find out what the recommended cadence is for these vaccinations, but it's very early, so it's kind of too hard to tell what the long-term impact is going to be. So, I mean, I know that one of the past chairs of this panel said that we are now officially a laughingstock to the rest of the world, which is unfortunate. So hopefully we can turn things around in the future. So yeah, that is the bummer news. So moving on. Let's get into some more fun science. Hey, yawns. I'm gonna... Did I make any of you yawn? Yawns are contagious. We've had many stories throughout the years on why yawns might be contagious, why you might catch a yawn from another human or even another animal. And ultimately, the science is still out. We do not know why yawns are contagious. We do not know the evolutionary kind of reasoning behind it. Some of the things we've talked about on the show before is that some research has suggested that it's kind of a social thing. Like, I'm yawning, you're yawning. That means you're kind of in sync with me. You're paying attention to me, right? Also, there's been a theory that it's a social signal of, I can close my eyes and go to sleep because it's safe. So you can also do that. And then, there's, of course, just the theory that it has to do with oxygen. Just needing more oxygen, right? But there's not really any good proof for any of those items. Well, for those of you watching, I have this truly terrifying image of what they are deeming an android yawning and chimps yawning in turn. This is from the University of London, this research. And they say that chimpanzees can catch yawns from an android imitating human facial expressions. In this study, they proved that chimps will both yawn, and this is what's really interesting, lie down in response to yawns made by an android, suggesting that it's a cue to rest rather than simply triggering something that's an automatic response or a social cue or something else. This is just, hey, time to go to bed. So that's the theory here. They used an android head that could simulate facial expressions to test the responses of 14 adult chimpanzees between 10 and 33 years old. This is in a sanctuary in Spain. The android generated facial expressions of yawning, gaping, and neutral. Each facial movement lasted 10 seconds. Chimps displayed contagious yawning in response to the yawn. The highest yawn contagion was during the full, wide open mouth yawn. There was a reduced response when the mouth was partially open. They called it gaping. And there was no contagion when the android's mouth was closed. This is what's really interesting. Only the yawning condition resulted in them gathering bedding materials and then lying down. So this is the first time I've ever heard of this in a study related to yawning, that it actually sparked sleep-like behavior. So it's not just I'm tired, you're tired. It's not just I trust you. It's not just I care about you, which is my favorite one. That you only yawn for people you care about. That obviously can't be the case for these chimps, because who's this android? But they fully laid down with some bedding materials. So they're like, oh, sleepy time. So this is where, we know that yawning has a kind of a physiological response, but we don't know its primary function. We don't know why we yawn. We don't know why it's contagious. We don't know kind of what the trigger or mechanism behind the contagious yawning response is. But this is a really interesting start to see that chimps did it with an android, and that also they had this additional response of the bedding. I do think it's funny that they responded to the android this way, and they have not done a similar study with humans yet to see if they're of a different response to the android versus the human versus a chimp. So that's where this gets really complicated. I also know that I yawn when my dog yawns. And my favorite thing is my almost 2-year-old will yawn when I yawn if I want him to go to bed and I'm trying to get him to go to sleep. I'll take a big yawn and he'll yawn. So it's contagious there. So there's a lot going on here. There's a social piece. There could be a physiological piece, but there's also this behavioral kind of secondary action that I haven't really seen discussed before. So I think that's pretty cool. In the chat, yes, I do think the android looks like Doug Jones as well. He might have sat for it. I don't think so. Yeah, and if you're listening, only look at the video if you really want to see a freakish, uncanny valley style android head. But I'll go ahead and stop sharing that image. How many times did I make you all yawn? I'm hoping at least 3. And then I guess I combated it because I provided the nightmare fuel afterwards. All right, so those were my opening stories. Before we move on to the next section, which is just more me, I'd like to remind you that if you just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science, usually with Dr. Kiki, Justin Jackson, and Blair Bazdarich, but tonight it's just Blair. If you want to help us grow or support the show and everything it takes to put it on, please get a friend to subscribe today on YouTube, on Facebook, on iTunes, wherever we are found. And please also check us out via Patreon. There's a Patreon link on our website. You can help donate to each episode monthly to help kind of keep the lights on here through our streaming platform, updating our technology as is needed, and keeping us web hosted. So you can help with all of that stuff. And you can also check out our Zazzle link. So we have a Zazzle store that's found on our website. And there you can find all sorts of custom merchandise with some of my drawings on it, with the TWIS logo on it. You can go crazy. And if there's something that you want a particular piece of art on or a particular or our logo on that's not in the store, you can actually ask us. You can send us an email and we can put that in the store for you. So I know, for example, at one time we had a high school teacher who wanted to wear a TWIS polo, and so I put that in the store for him, and he was able to get a polo with our logo on it to wear to school. So anywho, thanks for all your support. We couldn't do it without you. Now, yes, oops, all Blair. It's time for more me, but it's the me part. It's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair? Oh, me? Oh, I have some animal stuff. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this first section, I was actually really hoping to have Kiki here to talk about because it's very technical, but I'm going to do my very best. I have 2 different stories related to animals who don't get cancer and how we could leverage that to help humans either not get cancer or help treat cancer. So first, let's talk about sea cucumbers. So sea cucumbers, which normally I'd like find some good photos of sea cucumbers and pop them on the screen for you, but I can't do that many things at once. So, sea cucumbers. They look exactly like what they're called. They're like cucumber shaped. They're the size of like one of those Disneyland pickles. They're real big. They're usually in strange colors. They're kind of spiky. I used to love working with sea cucumbers at the aquarium. They're really fun to touch. We would use a nice 2-finger touch on them in the touch pool when we would have kids come through. So sea cucumbers, they look spiky. They're not spiky. They're actually very smooth. And they're basically the janitors of the sea. They mainly eat poop and other detritus, and they themselves poop out what is basically clean sand. So they are essential to the health of the ocean ecosystem. Detritivores are very important in the ocean because otherwise things would kind of pile up. They're important up here too, but especially I feel like in the water, it comes up a lot because it would just kind of float in the water column. Oof. Well, the sea cucumber could also be a key to fighting cancer. Researchers actually found, this is researchers from University of Mississippi, they found a sugar compound in sea cucumbers that can effectively block SULF2. SULF2, you say? Oh yes, it's an enzyme that plays a major role in cancer growth. So human cells and those of most mammals are covered in tiny hair-like structures called glycans. Glycans help with cell communication, immune response, and the recognition of threats like pathogens. In turn, cancer cells alter the expression of enzymes, including SULF2, which modifies the structure of glycans, which helps spread cancer. So basically the change in the structure of the glycans allows cancer to spread. And so in theory, if you could inhibit SULF2, this enzyme, you could fight the spread of cancer. So first they used computer modeling, and then they did a bunch of laboratory testing with sea cucumbers. They found that sugar, this particular sugar that they have, the sugar found in sea cucumbers, but not found in any terrestrial animals, let's see. Oh, I lost my place. Where did I go? Oh, here we go. So the sugar, which they call fucosylated chondroitin sulfate. they can inhibit SOLF2. So this one particular sugar, it's not found in any land animals. It's not found in us. It's really only, as far as they can tell so far, found in sea cucumbers. The fucosylated chondroitin sulfate. They inhibit the SOLF2. So they tried that in a computer model, in a simulation. It worked. Then they brought it into the lab, and they were able to synthesize it from the sea cucumbers. And what's really interesting is it doesn't, other previous tests to try to inhibit SOLF2 also inhibits blood clotting. But this one from the sea cucumber does not interfere with blood clotting. Why is that important? Oh, right. So you don't bleed to death. Medication that interferes with blood clotting, you have to be really, really careful, because even so, like this tiny little small cut could end up being life-threatening if your blood won't clot. And so the fact that this particular sugar does not interfere with the blood clotting, but it does interfere with SOLF2, this is something that could be a game changer for the medical field. So it's different than anything that they've tried to use before, but it also might be easier to create and safer to use. That's because other sugar-like drugs that they have tried to use to treat cancer, those come from pigs or other land animals. When they extract those, there's also a risk of transferring viruses, because pigs and other mammals are very similar to us, so there could be a zoonotic transfer. And then there's also the potential for other harmful agents. There's a potential for, it's just kind of too close that there's unintended consequences. But because this is a sea cucumber, it's an animal that's so different mechanically than us, there's way less risk in using a sugar from a sea cucumber. Now, it's interesting. You'd think that at this point we would be able to just synthesize a lot of these things, but there's research or scientists, the medical field is still isolating drugs from pigs because chemically synthesizing it is really, really hard. It's also very expensive. So the natural source is still the preferred method for a lot of drugs. But that means that, again, it comes with this risk of zoonotics or other problems when you take it directly from the pig. So they could synthesize directly from a sea cucumber and there wouldn't be these risks. The only problem there is that harvesting sea cucumbers is a limiting factor. They're not difficult to raise, but they're not quick. It's not like a fruit fly or a mouse. So they do farm them for food, but it's just, it wouldn't be at the level that you would need to do it at to be able to synthesize a cancer drug yet. So really, the way to make this come to market, the way for this to enter a clinical trial, the way for this to actually become a drug is to be able to synthesize it in the lab. But this is just the first step in a very long line of figuring out how these sea cucumbers fight cancer, how the sugar could be applied to a drug, and how that sugar could be synthesized, that drug could be synthesized synthetically. So all that to say, sea cucumbers, breaking sea cucumber news for fighting cancer. Pretty cool. And directly on the heels of that, bats. Now, I'm not going to suggest we start farming bats and synthesizing drugs from bats, but bats have a lot to teach us. That's because bats, a lot of them live a really long time. And in fact, this study from University of Rochester wanted to look at 4 specific bats that live up to 35 years. They say that's equivalent to about 180 human years. Whenever you try to talk about like dog years or bat years or any of these, it's tough. But essentially, based on the way that you extrapolate animal age in relation to human age and how long they should live based on body size and metabolism and all these things. They should not live that long. So they live about 35 years at the max. And what's really interesting is they do not appear to get cancer. So bats, these 4 species of bats that they studied, they don't get cancer. And they were able to boil it down to a few specific reasons. It's not just that they're really lucky. 1, bats and humans have a gene called p53, which is a tumor suppressor. It shuts down cancer. That's a good thing, right? When humans get cancer, it's often caused by a mutation in p53. That limits its ability to act properly, and so it prevents it from killing the cancer, basically. A little brown bat found in Rochester in upstate New York contains 2 copies of p53. Oh. Hi, Justin.
Hi. I don't know if this is going to work.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining. I'm talking about cancer in bats.
Ooh, I found a bat today.
Oh, so to catch you up real quick. 4 species of bats. They live up to 35 years, which is equivalent to about 180 human years. They don't appear to get cancer.
Wait. No, that's still only 35 human years. I
know. I already talked about that. But
okay.
They live a long time. They live longer than they should for their shape and their size and their metabolism and their lifestyle. They live longer than they should.
Yeah, smaller
and they don't get
creatures
cancer.
Don't live as long as big creatures, which seems
right.
Like it would be the other way around, but yeah.
Yes. So, these 4 species, they found out they live a really long time. They don't get cancer. What's going on? So 1, the little brown bat found in Rochester in upstate New York, they have this gene called p53, which we also have. When p53 fails, we can get cancer. So that happens in about...
It's a repair gene, I believe.
Yeah, so it can
fix that damage that takes place normally, and then if that gene isn't working, then the repairs don't take place, and then cancer can proliferate.
That's right. So in about half of human cancers, p53 failure is involved. In the little brown bat, they have 2 copies of p53, and they have elevated p53 activity. And so that is killing cancer cells before they become harmful.
Oh, so 2. We just need more of those.
Right. 2. An enzyme, telomerase, is inherently active in bats, which allows the cells to proliferate indefinitely. This is an advantage in aging. It supports tissue regeneration during aging and injury. What's interesting is if the cells divide uncontrollably, though, then that can cause cancer. So higher p53 activity actually compensates for that. So telomerase is healing injury, sometimes caused by cancer, and it's stopping it from getting overblown and turning into cancer. So telomerase, big deal. 3, they have an efficient immune system, knocking out multiple deadly pathogens. And so they recognize and wipe out cancer cells very quickly. And of course, as we age, we get inflammation. We get all of kind of these areas where cancer can hide and grow and blah, blah, blah. And so they're also good at controlling inflammation. So these are all of the things that are making bats live long and not get cancer.
And one of the things that causes inflammation and aging is senescent cells, which stopped self-repairing, it's that whole same system, it sounds like. I'm surprised bats die at all now.
Right. So here's what's really interesting. Ultimately, through this long, comprehensive study, bats do not have a natural barrier to cancer. Cancer cells are happening in their bodies. They have nothing stopping cancer from happening, but their cells can transform cancer from turning into a problem. They have all these tumor suppressing mechanisms, and so they survive. So what does this mean for us? Well, there are already several anti-cancer drugs targeting P53. That's what you alluded to, Justin. And then there's not yet any studies on telomerase, but this could be a good kind of thought to start that process. And so just kind of between these and then what I talked about right before this was cucumbers. There's a couple different situations. Sea cucumbers, sorry, I should have been specific. Sea cucumbers and bats giving us some clues into fighting cancer. So I love seeing that in the natural world because cancer is a naturally occurring problem. So there's natural solutions. Hi, Justin.
Hey, how you doing? Oh my gosh. Side note to whatever stories we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just stayed at the worst. I'm not even staying there. I started to stay at the worst hotel room I have ever seen in my entire life.
My goodness.
And I had checked the Wi-Fi ahead of time, and it was blazing fast, like the best internet at the worst motel. Fine for the show. I'll stay at the worst motel. But there's some weird technical thing specifically with Mac books, Apple products, and hotel Wi-Fis that they just don't get along. And so it connected at first, and then when I had to reconnect, there was no way to reset. Turned everything off, started stuff, erased stuff. Anyway, I found some road Wi-Fi here, so we'll see how this goes. I don't know how well. But
all right, well, I had one more animal corner story, but I'm going to save it because you're currently working. So please.
Okay. So I have my favorite animal story for a while. It's an animal intelligence story. So it's going to fit right into the Blair's Animal Corner.
Great.
This is a University of Tennessee. One researcher documented an immature Cooper's hawk for a couple weeks. And the hawk was using traffic pedestrian signal patterns as a concealment for hunting other birds. So the scenario is there's this street, and at the end of the street there's a red light with an intersection with a pedestrian cross. And if somebody hits the pedestrian crossing sign, it goes boop, boop, boop. Right? Like, so now you know, oh, okay, somebody's going to be crossing. Until that signal is sounding, that audible boop sound is happening, the hawk is nowhere to be seen. As soon as the pedestrian signal starts, boop, boop, the hawk shows up at the far end of the street on a perch. And it just sort of sits there. Now, if there's a couple of cars at the light, the hawk just watches. And if the light turns green and the cars go, the hawk disappears again. And doesn't come back until boop, boop, boop. And then the hawk reappears. And what often happens is that light, or occasionally happens at least, is that light, that red light with the cross, with the pedestrian signal, is about 90-second stop. So cars start to build up. If cars line up at least 4 houses deep, then the hawk springs into action. Because at the other end of the street, near the pedestrian crosswalk, is a yard of somebody who loves birds. And so every morning they throw out a whole bunch of bird seed and crumbs and things. And there's all these mourning doves and sparrows. All these birds come to snack there, and they're hanging out there on the lawn. But when those cars go 4 houses deep, the hawk on the opposite side of the street of all the, pecking free lunch birds comes swooping down just a couple of feet off of the sidewalk, low enough so that it's hidden behind the line of cars. And then it zooms all the way down to the street until it gets almost to the end, and then it zips in between a couple of the stopped cars at the front, bumper height, whoosh, and sneak attacks the crumb-eating birds. So they observed for a few weeks. They saw a couple of confirmed kills using this strategy. And what was amazing was not only does the bird not even bother to come look without the pedestrian crosswalk beeping, it also doesn't show up on the weekends. It doesn't even bother. There's not enough traffic on that street for the cars to line up. So it's absolutely using the traffic patterns with an audible signal, with a sort of seeing how if enough cars have lined up to give it the cover, whether or not it's worth making this attack. It's a real deep kind of a strategy, and it knows not to show up on the weekends. It's got the schedule of days.
Huh.
They did the study, and they found that the next season they weren't studying it, but they observed the behavior again, and they think it's even. They're not sure, but they think it's the same, likely the same bird.
Well, that's what I want to know. Is this going to spread socially? Is it just going to stay with this one bird? What's happening in other cities? I want to know how widespread this is. But it's a visual and audio cue that they could use to their advantage.
And the researchers sort of pointing out that in a normal wild environment, we probably are massively underestimating the complication, the sort of thought process or the complicated nature of the hunting strategies. It's not just, see a bird, go after it, see prey, go after it. But they likely are using pretty deep strategy, even in those native wild settings, that they're just applying. This one's now applying to an urban setting that's figured out
the sun is just right, the shadow's just right from this direction with that rock, or absolutely. Yeah. Wow, that's very cool. That's sharp stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my favorite bird story of the. It was a couple weeks old now. I've been trying to bring that story for like a couple weeks.
The cars just didn't line up for you. What could you do?
They just didn't get the right signal.
Did you bring any other stories, or is that?
I have a bunch more I could ramble on about, but let's finish up the animal corner.
Okay, great. So let's talk about bees taking breaks. I love this story. This is a story from University of California, Riverside, looking at bee queens, and specifically bumblebees, and how they like to take breaks. So bumblebee queens, they're the sole founders of their colonies. And in the early stages of colony building, they have to do everything. They're all by themselves. They forage for food. They incubate developing broods by heating them with their wing muscles. They maintain the nest, and they lay eggs. And if the queen suddenly disappears, the whole colony fails. But what's interesting is researchers just kind of naturally discovered that these queens had this burst of egg laying when they first established the colony, followed by several days of inactivity. They just took a nice rest. They monitored more than 100 queens over a period of 45 days. This was in a controlled insectary. They documented each queen's nesting activity, looking at their clutches, and they saw a pattern, which was that the queens paused reproduction for several days right after intense egg laying. Now, where this gets interesting is that it turns out it was more than just, I'm pooped from laying eggs, I'm going to rest until I am ready to start laying eggs again. No, it's more complicated than that. It actually aligns with the developmental stages of their brood. So the way that they figured that out is they added broods at different stages to the nest while the queen was resting. So they would add young larvae, old larvae, and pupae. And they found that the time that the queen would then suddenly begin laying eggs again was different depending on how old the brood was in her nest. So when you throw pupae in there, which are nearly mature bees, they resumed egg laying in only about 1.5 days. Pretty much right away, they got back to laying eggs. But when they added the larva, the pauses stretched to about 12.5 days. That is a long wait.
So if you're the queen bee,
yes,
and you're there in the breeding cave or whatever it is,
yeah.
That's how else do you tell time?
So it's how you tell time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also that they use cooperative brood care. So having the teenagers there means they have help for the next generation. Okay. The teenagers are old enough, the teenagers, right? The pupae are old enough that by the time new eggs hatch, they will be able to help care for the colony. So that's, yes, they're measuring time, but they are also measuring the ability of the colony. So like they're taking a rest because they can't have too many babies at once. They have to wait for the youngest to grow up old enough to be able to help take care of the next youngest. So previously, the conventional thinking was that these bees and other eusocial insects are just always popping out eggs. Across all stages of development, they're just make as many babies as possible. But it is strategic, it is intentional, and so in these very vulnerable early days of establishing a colony, if she pushes herself too fast, too hard, she could not survive, and then the whole colony would collapse. So it's really important that she takes care of herself, but it's also important that she times things correctly so that she gets help. So it's time to now look and see if other eusocial insects are doing this. And of course, this helps us understand the biological needs of queens and the establishment of a new colony, which is important in this world where bees are in trouble. So,
you know why bees never stop to smell the flowers when they're not working? It's just more work.
I thought you were going to say because
it's just more work. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, that's all my Animal Corner stories. What else do you want to talk about, Justin?
That's all I had. That's all I had.
We can be done.
Wait. No, I've got more though. I got more I can talk about. I'm sure. Hang on. Let me take a look into the grab bag here.
Okay, you may pick 1 to 2.
Well, I got psychiatric prescriptions are linked to higher ALS risk, but it might not be the medications that are doing it. It could just be that they're connected.
Yeah,
in terms of
that would make sense for sure.
So, yeah. Let's see. Ooh, long-term study finds vascular health leads to later dementia risk. That one's interesting because it kind of shows.
Is that just because you live longer?
No, but that you can actually see it coming before it gets to dementia in somebody's like 40s. You can already see if they have vascular problems that they are headed more likely towards dementia, because a lot of dementia is sourced by not being able to get enough blood to the brain through the vascular system. Oh, another weird thing. Red blood cells. I'm going to do all quick stuff. Red blood cell rupturing and not actual clotting has been driving some of the vessel blockage seen in COVID-19. They thought it was, the sort of coagulating blood or something was causing the higher risks of stroke with people who had COVID-19. Turns out, no, it's lysed cells that are getting stuck in weird places.
Oh.
Doing it, yeah.
Yikes. That sounds bad.
Yeah. Hey, men. And maybe women too. I don't even know if... probably everybody. colonoscopy screening, you should do it younger.
How much younger?
They found no difference in terms of chances of finding stuff in people 45 to 49 versus the group 50 to 54. So as much as 10 years younger getting that colonoscopy, the chances of them catching something that's not supposed to be there is just as good.
I see. So there's no point to wait.
No point in waiting. Hey, there's a new diagnostic pen on the market that you can write in the air with or do some handwriting. And this electronic pen has a 96% chance of correctly diagnosing Parkinson's disease.
What?
Yeah.
Just because it
Early
has
detection.
what like a gyroscope in it, and it can tell how you're moving?
It's got a sensor, and it can, it's sort of tracking the movement types, and it's also, I think, the firmness with which the pen is being gripped is also part of it.
Well, that wouldn't work if you had a bunch of nerve damage in your hand from an animal bite, but
Yeah, so you have to try to write with your other hand.
there's damage on both.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's all sorts of other stuff out there in the world of science.
Oh,
There
sure,
always
sure,
is.
sure.
There's always more. But, I guess that's... If we're near the end of the show, I don't know where we are. I just jumped in. I know you've been
We're near
trucking
the
along
end.
here.
I mean, we've been on the air for 51 minutes, but the first 40 was just me talking, so...
Well, that sounds like a solid show. Hey, dear TWIS minions in the audience, how is this? Is this sufficient? I can't tell. I can never tell the connection on this side because it always looks fine
So
to me.
to me, your sound is perfect. Your
Okay.
your visual has glitched out a few times, but your sound has been fine.
All right. So,
Who needs a hotel
I now
room?
have
Perhaps.
a backup. yeah. Actually, yeah, totally. I think the one place I had been going, everything is booked this week. I didn't think ahead. It's the university is graduating.
Graduation, yeah.
People. So they've brought all of the relatives from all over the world to see them wear the fancy hat.
Of
and
course.
gown. So Patrick says my sound is kind of muffled. It might not be on the right
that's
setting.
fine. Yeah.
This was quick.
Yeah,
and ad hoc.
it is what it is.
But
All right.
if it
Well,
works-
since we're doing the after show in the actual show, maybe we should close out.
Let's do that part. I gotta find the
Yeah.
It's somewhere.
Hey, I think that's going to do it for us tonight on This Week in Science. Thank you for listening, watching, joining all of us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. Shout outs to Fada for his help with social media and show notes. Gord for manning the chat room, Identity4 for recording the show, Rachel for your amazing assistance. I think there's only a couple flubs for you, Rachel, tonight. Thank you in advance. And I'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors for their generous support. I do not have the list, so suffice it to say, insert your name here. Thank you, Patreon sponsors. Thank you for your support. If you're interested in supporting us, you can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. On next week's show, we will be back with Justin, Kiki, and me, Blair. Don't miss it. That'll be at 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. You take mine now.
Want to listen to us as a podcast? I was on it. You didn't have to hand off the baton. Just listen to This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, force your friends to listen too.
Yeah. Grab their phone when they're not looking. Add TWIS. They'll never know until it pops up in their queue, and then they'll be like, yes, this is amazing. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org. You can also sign up for a newsletter that will someday come, as Godot once did. No, he didn't.
We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes through the night, please let us know on one of our many, many social media accounts, or just send us an email where emails are found.
Yeah.
Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line. Otherwise, your email will end up with a pod of unborn bees that aren't ready to help.
Yeah, sure. Not so easy, is it, Justin?
It's hard to come up with it on the fly like that. I feel like you must have a sharper mind than me. That's why you're so good at this.
We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science.
So you know, at a tight 51... every single minute will be required for the radio rebroadcast.
That's not my problem.
What an adventure, though. I was like, I got so fed up with the Wi-Fi technology problem issues stuff going on. I just threw everything in the truck and I was like, I'm going to go find public
You're going to
Wi-Fi
find
somewhere.
it.
I'm going to go track
On
it.
a hunt for the
think I
Wi-Fi.
I think I know where to go. The Natural Habitat shorts on YouTube. No.
I'm catching up.
I have-
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, Justin, you missed my, it's not even like a tirade. It just, I told everyone very defeated about, RFK's vaccine panel. That's all.
Why? I think it's great.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Look, there's... I feel like this is when, in the olden days, the old schoolers will remember these stories, when a kid would get caught smoking. And then Dad'd be like, all right, here's a whole pack. Don't leave that
smoke
closet till you smoked them all.
Yeah, but in this one,
I feel
they're
like
saying,
that's
hey,
what the
smoke
whole
that whole
country-
pack, and we'll give the whole class lung cancer.
Yeah,
Because
I
of
feel
you.
I feel like that's what the country is doing. It's like at some
Oh my
point,
God.
everybody just gave up and was like, okay, yeah, I know this is gonna end badly, but yeah, show me what you've been talking about with your conspiracy fluoride theories and your...
But we already saw, like, half of Texas has measles right now. Like, we already saw. It's already been shown.
No, we didn't need this. I'm lying for the sake of self-preservation, mental states, and things like this. Like,
I was stuck today trying to figure out, like, how am I going to find out when I need a vaccine? And how am I going to advocate for me and my child to get the vaccines that we need?
I think if you have a pediatrician who's over the age of 25, you will have no problem getting the proper advice. Right?
Well, except they are following the advice provided by the CDC, which will no longer exist. Yes. That's who decides how often, like, the COVID vaccine is the perfect example. Nobody knew how often to get boosters. That was decided by this vaccine panel. Nobody decided, my pediatrician didn't decide a 6-month-old gets the first COVID vaccine. That's what the panel decided.
So they can't just keep the old charts? in the old.
Right.
Like, I
but
mean,
so that
like,
that works to a certain extent.
I doubt, and I could be totally wrong, but I doubt that most serious, dedicated health workers are going to be like, I'm going to throw out everything I know that's knowledge-based and just
I
go
don't
with
think
what I'm
that.
told.
I'm concerned that, like, will insurance companies stop covering vaccines because they're not provided by the CDC at that interval? Like, oh, sorry, that's not covered because that's not the suggestion from the CDC. Like, will supplies drop because the government isn't ordering them or subsidizing them? These are the things that I'm worried about. And
Oh, yeah.
gosh forbid if the next pandemic comes around that we won't know when to provide vaccines for those either.
But we won't be making them for it because we'll be toughing it out because this is the sequel that nobody wanted.
Right.
It would be the sequel to the movie that nobody liked the first time. I don't know. Why they've made a second one. I don't understand. Oh well.
I don't know. It's anyway. I did a very short presentation on that just so that everyone knew what was going on, but it's frustrating to me. It's hard for me to see the next step with this particular one. But Paul Disney, you're right. It's unlikely insurance companies will drop vaccine support because people getting super sick from not getting them would harm their bottom line. That is fair. Also, pharmaceuticals are the ones making the vaccines, so they want to sell them. So I'm hoping that in this case, capitalism is on our side, but we will find out.
So there's some strange players out there who are going to not do things the way so, like, for instance, they want to repeal all of the automotive emission standards.
Right.
California puts in place these emission standards that's copycatted by, I think, 13 or 16 other states.
Yeah.
And that's been the way we've done it. And manufacturers a long time ago used to make one car over here with the low standard, and then they'd make some cars with the high standard. And at some point they realized, hey, actually that costs us more money. It's easier to make everything to the same standard because we have one of those assembly line type situations in our manufacturing, and it's just easier to make everything the same. Which is why cars have air conditioners even if they're, in Napa now or in the Bay Area where nobody uses them. They just put them in everyone. It's easier, cheaper. So even though they're trying to repeal stuff like that, the auto industry's like, okay, thanks, but we asked for that 30 years ago or 40 years ago, but we're kind of over that now. We've moved on. And they're, the push like, oh, we don't want the electric cars. And the automotive industry's like, well, actually, that's what everybody's wanting to buy right now. So we're going to keep making those.
Thanks, no thanks.
Yeah. We didn't ask for it. So, again, we did, but that was 40 years ago. And now we're over it. So thanks.
Yeah. Too late. Jeez. Yeah.
Like this whole thing, this conflict with California, with the National Guard or the California Guard and all of this stuff, the claims that they're going to withhold federal spending to California, and then the governor saying, okay, well, I'll have Californians not pay federal tax.
Yeah, exactly. We're at a, what's it called, an aid deficit or whatever. We pay like $83 billion more to the federal government than they give us. Yeah. And then the give us thing is also, it's like, well, that's funding like multiple naval bases and Air Force bases in California. So what are you really talking about? Right. California's a pay for it state. There's more than half of the Congress and the Senate are in states that don't pay more taxes than is spent on them. So why are they telling anybody how to spend money when they're not they're not paying for any of it that's not in their state already? So
A lot of it's ridiculous. But I mean, there are things like, California, what California did with that air standard was they had a problem with air quality and the federal government wasn't taking care of it, and they got an exception to do it themselves. I could see California trying to take that model to healthcare.
Sure. Yeah.
To numerous things where California's
That's interesting.
We're
going to do our own thing. Yeah.
We're going to have to create our own system. I mean, California almost has a universal health care for, in its Medicaid expansion. And it has, like, you can cancel the food stamp program nationally. Well, most of that food came from California. And if California decides to hand it out to its people, we'll be fine. Like,
no, that's such an interesting point. I really like that. Let's just make our own social structure for,
Fourth largest economy in the world. You're telling me we're not a country unto our own economic ability? We're an economic powerhouse of... Yeah. When somebody's like, "Oh, United States is an economic powerhouse," a big chunk of that is in one state, California, and we make the food. So if we want to replace, and it would take the initiative of the governor to actually follow through with all this stuff. But if we did get into a situation where we weren't interacting or talking to the federal government financially, we would actually benefit to the tune of many billions of dollars. And instead of providing benefits that go across multiple states, we could just do them at home. And my goodness, would that be an improvement here?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's reasons for Californians to be optimistic. Now, if you live anywhere else, gosh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yikes.
We're already in a red state, but turning it into a red nation is not going to improve things. You're going to get what you had and maybe less. That's how that works.
The United States have our own blue zones, and they're blue states.
But I don't know how much we've talked about this, but since I have been back in even the California...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what happened.
What?
While I was gone, this place went to heck.
What about it? I'm not disagreeing with you. I want to know what specifically you're talking about.
So, specifically what I'm talking about is when I left California, there was always a housing crisis. There was a homeless thing. Maybe part of it is I went to a place that doesn't have it. And so didn't see homeless people for years.
Oh, no. It's been made much worse by the pandemic.
Yeah. And then now that I'm back, and I'm back in the nice, sleepy hometown. Nice, quiet, little, affluent university town of Davis, where people didn't used to lock their doors, or even their car doors, when they went out shopping. It's like overrun by... At first I was like, oh gosh, there's a lot of homelessness here now. And now I'm realizing, oh no, it's like a lot of opiate addicts everywhere. It's crazy.
So there's a few things going on. That's one, right? Obviously, COVID also pushed a lot of people out of their homes, right? But also, during the pandemic, the unhoused populated areas that they had not previously because there weren't people around, okay? And then on top of that, specifically in California, we housed our unhoused for most of the pandemic. But then when we lost funding and those programs ended, people were just shoved back onto the street. So that caused a bunch of problems. So there were people who were like in and out of supportive housing, but were given a full place to live during the pandemic and then suddenly had nothing. So they lost anything they had been working on. So many people lost their jobs. It was the pandemic. It made it
and that's what everybody's telling me.
Terrible.
That's the exact time I was gone. So at least it matches there. And yet, so I'm seeing both a combination of an much more intense level of underserved in poverty and drug addict activity situations, environment. And everything's more expensive. So, like, wow, like a lot more. What happened? Why is everybody charging all this money if everybody's broke?
I mean, the cost of living alone, I think my rent is double what it was before the pandemic.
Yeah. So there was
Double.
a multifaceted, try to put in every element that is conceivable into a model to look at basically at economics for societies. And the one thing that they could tweak on it that would create higher education, higher life satisfaction, better health, better every aspect of the economy would be booming. The thing that fixed everything is you got rid of the landlords.
Right. Of course. So that's the thing is that
it wasn't the insurance prices, it wasn't the gasoline price or the this or the that or the other little commodity. It was rent. If you got rid of rent.
So I recently I've been looking into some numbers that related to the housing shortage. And what I've been discovering is that by and large, if you just took every single house and apartment in the United States, there's more than enough for everybody. There's more than enough. There are people that own multiple houses. There are corporations that own multiple houses and entire apartment complexes and all of these things.
Thousands of single-family homes they moved into.
Yes.
I mean, they started the Wall Street hedge fund.
There's enough houses for everyone.
Yeah, but the problem is, of course, nobody wants to move to a lot of those red states. So if we could make
for example, in the Bay Area, okay, a place where people want to live, there are just so many empty apartment complexes, just empty, yeah. And they're building more all the time. I see new ones. They're building more here. They're building more there. 13 stories, 20 stories. They're everywhere. But they're like $5,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. Who is that for? And rather than lower the price and fill them, they'd rather keep them high and make as much money as possible off of the units they can fill.
So partly it's that. Partly it is also they can recoup a bunch of that loss as maintenance costs. It's a tax loophole thingy. Plus, here's the other aspect of it. It is a form of interest-free borrowing, or you can write off the interest at least.
Right, it's a loss. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the asset appreciates because property values just go up.
Right. If somebody moves in now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
if somebody moves in now at one price, but you can list it at a higher price in 6 months, then if it's vacant, you can actually get more money out of it. I know it does. Right. It's not.
You
not
get
good.
more money out because the value of the place, even if you don't have 100% tenancy, but
right.
You got 10% tenancy, but all your units are $10,000 a month. They count all of them like they would be worth $10,000 a month, and that's how.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. No, this is where, like, I see people saying, like, okay, higher tax for vacant properties if you're a landlord or a corporation, right? Higher tax rates for vacant properties.
So they
put people in them.
Newsom is doing that for commercial. He's got something like
that
for commercial.
Good.
Because commercial does the same sort of thing. They put the rates for commercial properties up ridiculously high, and then they'll sit empty for years because they, again, get some sort of a maintenance deferment at the very least. And if it's not costing them, especially if it's not costing them money, if it's already an owned property, an owned asset, then maybe it's not even worth the headache of leasing. There should be there should be some rent control. Is what there should be.
Oh, rent control. What's that?
It's actually illegal in the state of California. It's a crime, apparently, to have rent control. We aren't allowed. So if the community of my little town of Davis wanted rent control, which we don't, but if we did, we could vote for it in a reasonable democracy and say we want to have controlled rent prices in this town. But you're not allowed to even have that on the ballot. You're not allowed to vote for it, and you're not allowed to make it a law because they've passed a law that made it illegal for people to vote for rent control, which sounds ridiculous. But here's where it would make the most sense. There's a community down a couple, an area or a town a little ways from here where 65-70% of the people who live there are renting. The housing prices, are apparently too high to buy, or the economy actually isn't as strong as it would need to be for people to buy, and everybody's paying a rent that goes increasingly up and up and up over time, making it impossible for them to get out of that loop. Now, that's a community that if they voted on it, would likely vote for rent control, and then their rent would stay at the same amount it is now for maybe the next 10 years. Before, right? And so then, is their income compared to the rent they pay starts to change and makes more sense? They might start buying those homes. But it doesn't favor those who own property that is for rent. That's who doesn't like that, and that's who keeps winning.
I know. It was on the ballot in San Mateo County, and it did not pass.
Well, it was on the ballot statewide. A while back because it's
you're right,
because it has to be a statewide initiative, and you know who voted
no
it
that's
down?
not true though, because San Francisco does rent control on their own.
So San Francisco and LA both have some areas of rent control that were properties built before 1940. There's a cutoff on when the property was built. And it's hilarious because it's like...
I don't think that's right, Justin. I lived in a rent control house that was in the outer Sunset.
Okay. Look up the date, because there is rent control that's possible in California, but it's not like the properties have to be 50 years
1979.
old. It's 1979 that it has to be built?
So it's basically almost everything in San Francisco.
So that's San Francisco specific then, because LA, the statewide one was like 1940 something, which made it like West Hollywood had rent control in LA, and a couple other little pockets, and it was like that was it. Like if you were close to the downtown area, there were some pockets.
Yeah, for statewide, this is what I have to deal with. Rent control is 5% plus the consumer price index, or 10%, whichever is less. So I've had to deal with a 10% rental increase every year.
Everybody does. Everybody everywhere is getting 10% a year. Everybody.
Yep.
Everywhere. And it just the
which
math
is insane.
Doesn't work.
The amount of money that results in is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Nobody's getting 10% of a raise in their job every year.
No. Inflation isn't 10% a year. Well, it might have been the last few years, but it normally is.
But income's certainly not going up like that. So income goes up at like 1 or 2% if you have a cost of living raise.
I had a banking game, like board game, and I think I got it at the thrift store. So I got it as a kid in 1980, but I think this thing was probably much older, probably from the 50s or the 60s. But basically, you were the bank, and you would get these cards, and you would have to decide on whether or not to make a loan.
Right.
The game. It was like, and one of the things I always had remembered was that you couldn't give anybody a home loan if the loan was more than 25% of their earnings. You wouldn't be allowed to make that loan.
What?
And that was all in that game. That was all based on real like banker stuff.
That's wild. So you could buy a house for a quarter of your annual earnings?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
you couldn't. Well, you couldn't. No. You couldn't buy for your mortgage. Your mortgage couldn't be more
The
than
mortgage.
A quarter.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
The mortgage could not be more than a quarter of your earnings for the house.
Now your mortgage is like 10 times your annual earnings.
No. I mean, the monthly mortgage. Sorry.
Oh, the monthly.
mortgage.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So, and that was also true for renting.
Okay.
Like you weren't
Yes,
supposed to be renting a place that was for more than
Yeah.
a quarter. Like the quarter of
Right.
your income was the most you're supposed to spend on it.
Wouldn't
Now
that be
people are
nice? And you
spending-
could actually put something in the bank.
And that was the whole point. That was the whole point of the economic system. Is you put money in the bank, you save up, you buy a thing, you go on vacation, you spend money other places. Those places then have money, and they take out mortgages, and they then rent, and then they get a mortgage, and then they buy their house, and then they go on vacation in your neighborhood, and they sell them stuff, and like people would spread that money all around. And now we have some, what do you call it, greedy people who are like, oh, the buck stops here, and it goes. We have, like, it's one of the weirdest concepts. We have Fort Knox. We're not on a gold standard, but we still have this depository where we put all this gold. So
Yeah.
here's this thing we find real precious. What do? Oh, we bury it in a hole in the backyard and guard it so nobody can see it, touch it, use it, spend it.
Give
like,
a tenth of a bar to every American. That's what you should do.
Well, I'm just like, what is the point of the wealth hoarding on certain level where we no longer have it in the economy? Because that's where it belongs. Otherwise, there's no point in money if you don't have it in the economy. So you got to tax the rich.
Hi, Kiki. Kiki popped into the chat room.
Kai is now a freshman.
Oh my
Congratulations.
goodness. I cannot believe it. He was in diapers when I started. Goodness gracious. Thanks for popping in, Kiki. Oh,
Old Manny stuff. Oh my
so
gosh.
exciting.
Everything about this new America, it's kind of troubling. And you talk to the young people, which I do on occasion. I'm learning all kinds of new words. Most of which I've already forgot. But I know that the things aren't bussin' like they used to be.
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, late stage capitalism is not fun.
Is that what this is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anytime you say late stage anything, it's never like...
It's not good. No.
And you've got a late stage present coming. Oh, great. No, it's never...
We have a late stage CDC.
Oh, my goodness.
It was our pleasure, Kiki. I can't wait for you to see how the show turned out.
I was here the
I'll
whole
leave it at
time.
that. You can find out as a surprise later.
Oh, did you do the disclaimer that was there?
No, I saved it for next week.
Okay.
I did something off the cuff. Yes, Kiki, there's 40 straight minutes of Blair's Animal Corner to start the show. So enjoy
So
that.
awesome.
It was certainly a show. You could call it that. So here we are. All right. Are you ready for bed, Justin?
What are you saying? Are you saying good night, Blair?
Yeah. Oh, finally the correct amount. Blair's Animal Corner. Heck yes. Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Kiki, wherever you are. Good night, Minnie.
Good night, Kiki. Thank you for popping in. I hope you had fun with your family tonight. What an amazing occasion. all of our love and congratulations to your family. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. As Kiki would say, stay lucky.
Stay curious.
Believe in science. Stay curious.
Stay out of
Deep
traffic.
breaths. Yes. Stay out of traffic is a good one. Deep breaths. And lean on each other.
Stay
right.
you. Don't lose
Stay
you
you.
in the midst of all this other stuff going on.
Yeah. This is a phase. Hopefully we all make it out. Good night.